Okay, I'm not sure where you got that very bad joke from, but that was that was good. Um, I do have a couple of things. Thank you so much for your patience in us working out this plan. So we released our reentry and virtual plan on Tuesday. And I'd like to thank everyone who prior to that and since has sent in submissions, advice, and uh, ideas, feelings about how things are going. So for all of those, I thank you very much. Um, each week on Wednesday, we have a state superintendent's meeting and a couple of updates from those. You may or may not be aware that after the governor released the 9/8 start date, they also released a hard 6/1 end date. And we have put a draft calendar up before our employees, and we've also put on the board agenda for next Monday. We will give the board any feedback that we get from employees in the interim. So far, the response has been very, very positive. In working through with WVDE, we've been working on the instructional minutes to make sure that we have 180 days worth of minutes, but they're not necessarily still translate into 180 days on site. Those are different things. So we'll continue to explain that to folks as we go through it. We had some clarification from WVDE, and I'll just let Mr. Osborne in from WVDE and the state that should there be a closure from the governor for remote learning, that the expectation is that we continue to have all of our faculty on site and delivering remote learning, virtual learning from the workplace, and a different order from the governor could abrogate that, but at this point, that is the advisement that we're receiving. Our summer feed program will be continuing through to September the 8th. It actually stops in terms of the federal funding that we get for that program. It stops August 31st. It doesn't start back up until school starts back up, but we're not leaving kids without food for a week. So even though the summer feed federal program is not paying us, we will be continuing to feed families during that gap because we think that's an important service. We also, as we're going through this process with folks answering the questionnaires, one of the things that they will see is a question from us about whether or not they need meals from us during virtual. It is a requirement that we feed students who receive free and reduced lunch, regardless of whether they choose on-site or virtual. So we are working through the logistics of running meal programs on-site at the same time that we're running meal programs that have to go out into the community. So sometimes it's helpful to share with folks just the immensity of the logistics involved in doing this. In meeting with the other superintendents and with the state and the feedback from folks, one of the largest areas of confusion or requests for additional information is around the virtual program. The state has been working with us to clarify virtual options, what's allowable, what's not, what support they will give, what support they will not, the parameters. They have told us that they intend to release a guidance document to us next week. We have already begun an additional guidance document, and we are planning on scheduling a number of Zoom sessions for parent education on virtual and explain how essentially we believe it's going to work and what the responsibilities are for the parent, what the responsibilities are for the student, what would that look like, when is synchronous learning, when do I have to actually be sitting down face-to-face with a teacher, when is asynchronous learning, when is independent learning, and it will be a learning curve for everyone. We thank everybody for their patience while we're trying to get the best information to them as quickly as we possibly can, because we would like for things to be accurate. We've seen what happens in a community when inaccurate information is put out, and it's confusing and frustrating for people. We also anticipate receiving a guidance document on homeschool and other students, dual enrollment students, AP students. We will continue to provide all of those upper level courses in terms of AP, dual enrollment, and honors courses in our virtual program. We also received some feedback on our reentry plan and a request that we include a special section on students who receive special education services. And I've answered several questions regarding that. And so in our next iteration, which will be at the next board meeting, we'll have an updated version of the reentry plan posted with some guidance included in that section. We had originally conveyed clearly that that would be individual IEP team decisions, and we didn't want to put out something that people felt was rigid, and we were telling special education students and families what their child's IEP would look like, because that's not appropriate. But we do have some guidance we can release on the process that will help folks feel that their issues are being addressed. We also have are working on a staff Q&A. Our staff have very different questions and concerns than our parents do. And some of this is around us trying to separate those issues so that that already 35+ page document doesn't get any more complex. So we'll start separating those Q&As. I would also like to give a special shout out to a student, Ms. Molly Hanscom, who sent me an email with her technical advice on her Surface Go and her advisement for our IT director on some of the finer points of that and her suggestions. So at the end of the day, I appreciate parents for, against, happy, mad, wherever they're at. I appreciate that we're in this together, and please, please, please give us every piece of information, feedback that you have. And I promise you, it may take us a day or two to get back to you, because I'm responding to a very large volume of email right now. Every one of those where you hit a notification, the email comes to myself and the school board, and all of them get answered. And it is just a time-consuming process. So thank you for your patience while we do that. So those are all the updates that I have for the re-entry plan, and I will turn it back over to you, ma'am. You're muted, Ms. Skinner.
Thank you. Thank you for that update, Dr. Gibson. And next up, we have the Cultural Unity presentation.
Awesome. Well, my name is Tanya Dallas Lewis, and I am the Cultural Unity and Equity Coordinator, as well as the Staff Development Coordinator. And so the purpose of me being here tonight was, number one, to see all your beautiful faces, but also to share what Cultural Unity is doing, what we've been doing, where we are, and where we're going, especially as we look to safely reopen schools for fall, and what that means for all of our students, our community, our families, our staff. So I'm going to share my screen. I want to acknowledge that I do have a few ambassadors with me. I'll unwrap that a little bit in a few minutes, who will also be speaking with me, and I'm really glad to see their faces here tonight as well. So let me go ahead and pull that up. Okay, and then I'm going to put it in presentation mode. So just give me one quick second. And then if you guys can give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Can y'all see that? Awesome. All right, so here we go. Cultural unity and equity in Jefferson County schools. I wanted to lead off the presentation with something that made me kind of think about a story that I could use to connect all of us. Think about something that you've done that you had to do, and you had to be the first one to do it, even if you were afraid. And so my son and I have a 14-year-old and a 19-year-old. My 14-year-old and I had the pleasure to go to the mother continent, Africa, last October. And one of the things that I got to do, as you can see, is pet a cheetah. Now, you'll see the Gary Howard quote there, we can't lead where we won't go. And Gary Howard is a mentor of mine. He is a 40-year experienced veteran educator, equity and unity workshop facilitator, social justice worker, and author. And I have been involved in some deep equity training with him. And so when I saw this photo, I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I need. This is what I want to use to kind of bridge these conversations tonight. And so there I am. You'll notice that I am sitting next to what is a professional trainer. He works with these animals every day. Now, quick fun facts about cheetahs. They are the fastest land animal. So you can see why if you notice, I am squatted down. So if the animal did any sudden movements, I was instructed to stand up immediately. If I remained in squatting position, I think you guys could probably figure out what was going to happen to me. Before I even got in there, I had to undergo a training. I had to understand everything that I needed to know to make sure that I kept myself safe, but also honored the cheetah. I also had to put on some type of solution on my hands that would eliminate my smell, so that it would not alarm the cheetah that something quite unlike itself was in its presence. So it was amazing. My son was joking with me, as most of you all who have kids know. Your kids, typically our kids think, oh, you're not gonna do it, you're too afraid. And so I knew that in order for him to do it, I had to do it. And so I thought this would be just a wonderful picture. It was one of the most exhilarating times of my life. And obviously I lived to tell about it. So anyway, moving forward, we can't lead where we won't go. And so where are we going? So when it comes to cultural unity and equity, or the cultural diversity department, where we were in a place of awareness. We're going to look at that really quickly. We're also going to look at where we are now, okay, and what that means as far as application, and then where we're headed. We want to be future ready. So much uncertainty exists around COVID-19, and so we want to be prepared for what we can be prepared for. And a lot of that journey involves our parents, our caregivers, and our community. So let's take a closer look at each one of these. So first, awareness. Oh, I had funny pictures. Next one was application. Because the reality is, sometimes when we have to apply our awareness, it can be a mixture of fun and discomfort and uncertainty and adventure. All of this is involved in the journey. And then here's another picture just for you. Of course, our beautiful parents, caregivers, and community. None of this can happen quite the same without them. So now, that awareness, we moved from diversity. We had awareness going on here. I want to celebrate what was already happening before I got here. Jefferson County Schools was already very aware of its demographic, its populations, the various communities. Jefferson County recognized that everyone had value and that we were all needed at the table because we all had something of value to bring to that table that benefited everybody. That's awareness, all right? And that's a great springboard for where we need to go, which is still with diversity, but also uniting and equity. And so here's what that looked like. That gets us to where we are right now. So with that in mind, the Cultural Diversity Department, we have changed our name. We will now be the Cultural Unity and Equity Department. We also had cultural diversity school reps. Well, we met together back in March 4th and we unpacked this word diversity, and we understood and associated and just kind of talked honestly about what connotations that word diversity had. And we wanted to look again towards movement. And so now they will be called the Cultural Unity Advocates. They will be advocates in their school, leaders in cultural proficiency. They will be modeling and serve as a liaison for other teachers who are also modeling cultural proficiency, as well as those who want to know more. And then, of course, our Summer Ambassadors program. Now, I brought some friends with me, and they're going to speak in just a few seconds, but they were also a part of this application. How do we apply our awareness, right? How do we apply it, right? What does that look like? And so the Summer Ambassador Program has a lot to do with that. Also, application, where we are, well, we are affirming and growing with our teachers on guidance and exploration of a cultural responsive linguistic teaching and learning practices. Now, to sum that up really quickly, what that basically means is it looks at the neuroscience and the way typically our marginalized or collectivist learners learn. So the brain is programmed by culture. And the way it works is that all learners have to connect new content to what they already know. And so when we bring various cultures together, as educators, as leaders, we want to make sure that we are igniting and increasing those capacities for those intellectual capacities to build and grow. And part of that, again, moves with that unity, that awareness, that diversity, and acknowledging those differences, while at the same time working and teaching and creating authentic relationships across those differences without anybody giving up who they are. Also, we're looking strategically at how we're attracting, retaining, and recruiting more teachers of color. So as our county, especially with our Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Mexican populations, our lower SES, and so on, as we continue to grow in diversity, we want to make sure that while we affirm our teachers that are here and doing the work and are caring and love these kids, that we also make sure that we have representations of these various these cultural groups in our schools so they can see what they can also be. And then constantly looking at ways to have a more diverse and inclusive curriculum. So that's where we are, and this informs where we're going, especially as we move towards the fall, as we move toward blended virtual learning, preparing for COVID-19 and what that means as far as equity is concerned. I often say that COVID-19 has brought its challenges, but it's also brought some great opportunities for us to take some let's take some longer looks, if you would, at things that we missed, not because we didn't care, but because the dailiness of life and school and teaching and families, right, kind of clouded that vision. And so the way we're going to support and sustain these applications where we are now is we're going to make sure that we're continuously engaging on these 4 levels: personal, professional, organizational, societal, and structural. And that includes SOMO with an equity lens, support for our teachers as they support our students, as we partner and bridge with our communities together to set our students up for success and get them prepared to contribute to the global society. So I spoke of the Summer Ambassadors. I'm gonna actually stop sharing my screen so I can look at them and hold on one second, please, and have them speak. The purpose of the Summer Ambassador Program training that just happened actually last week was to engage our cultural unity advocates who desired to go a little bit deeper. People who wanted to take an inside-out approach, to introspect, to look inside and become aware of from whom, how, where did they develop their values, assumptions, and beliefs about people who may be culturally different than them. It also included developing an intentional frame, meaning the ability to shift lens and be aware that there are different cultural programs that condition the way we know and learn and teach and communicate, and how that impacts our spaces in our classrooms, whether we are staff, whether it's student, whether it's even parent and caregivers. And so I have about 6 with me today. I've invited them to just give their, I guess, perspective, or just their, I hate to call it a testimonial, about what they experienced in that training and why it was important for them to attend. And so if we're ready, I'm trying to see if Andrea Stewart is here. If she is not, we'll go straight to Kara Jeffries. What I love about these ambassadors is that we had a variety programmatic levels represented, from service personnel to teachers to assistant principals and so on. And so I'm gonna hush and let's see if Kara is ready to go. Kara, if you're ready to go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right. Thank you, Tanya, for asking us to speak. I'm very nervous, but I want to start with first why I wanted to go deeper than just being a cultural unity advocate, but to learn more on how to apply that into my culturally responsive classroom. Is for students like my deaf cousins, for students like myself who have academic.
I've had 5 overt things that have happened to me as an employee since 1989 that have people saying things about my neighborhood and the school that my kids went to, and it just hurts. I mean, these came from 5 different schools, and so it's all over the county. One mother, when I was subbing, one teacher had a parent-teacher conference during her planning period. She came back just downing the mother because she wasn't dressed correctly. That wasn't right. I mean, the mother showed up for the parent-teacher conference. There was a letter from the school that my kids in, and it had some grammatical errors. Everybody makes mistakes. So another employee told me, well, that doesn't matter. Those parents can't read anyway. They don't care. That was my neighborhood she was talking about. So I told her, really? I'm a very literate person. There was a school project at the school where my kids went to, and I was subbing. And the teacher said, well, my kids can't do that. She was talking about the kids from my neighborhood again. My daughter worked at this school for a number of years as a BD aide, and she worked with a teacher. When he found out she grew up in my neighborhood, you grew up there? They can't believe it. I want to be an advocate and show those kids in my neighborhood that they can grow up and do anything. My kids are strong. They are not in jail. They are not on drugs. They have grown up here. They are citizens and tax-paying citizens working, raising families now. I just want to show the other kids in this neighborhood that they can be anything. They can rise above it. They can get an education. They can, and if people are saying that to me, to my face, what are they saying behind my back? And one time somebody, a teacher told me, well, when they say they come from that neighborhood, they must just run the other way. I said, no, they don't. Our kids are just kids. Please educate them as kids. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And that is Cheryl Vines. She is at Wright Denny, and she's also our service personnel as well as a long-term sub. Kara Jeffries, Harper's Ferry Middle School, music teacher and EL teacher. Did I get that wrong?
Science, and this year I'm picking up a general music class.
Thank you. I was close. Next, we're almost done. Heather Griffin from Jefferson High School. She is an EL teacher. Heather, take it away.
Oh, now, Miss Lewis, I'm at TA Lowry.
I'm sorry, Heather. I know who you are.
That's okay.
That's my nerves, girl. No. Let me try that.
No, you are perfectly fine.
From
You are fine.
TA Lowry, she is our assistant principal. I was thinking Heidi, Heather.
Yes,
Heather, Heidi. Sorry.
she is, yes. So, greetings. My name is Heather Hagley, and I have the pleasure of being the assistant principal at TA Lowry. On June 16th and 17th, I had the great opportunity to attend the Jefferson County Schools Summer Ambassador Training with the Jefferson County Department of Cultural Unity and Equity. This training was one of the most powerful ones that I have ever attended in over my 20 years in education. Tanya Dallas Lewis organized this training and set the tone for our training to be open, honest, and safe while tackling content that is hard for us to tackle and be honest about sometimes. It was done in a positive way and has forever changed my thinking. Additionally, it has also encouraged me to research, read, and have open conversations with friends and family of my own about race, American history, and their own experiences. As a proud West Virginia educator, and I have spent more than a dozen years in college, it saddens me to be able to say, honestly, that there are parts of American history that I do not know and am not aware of. However, thanks to the support of Dr. Gibson and the vision of Tanya Dallas Lewis, I am proud to say that there are things that I do not say. I cannot say it is not my problem. I cannot say it does not affect me. It does affect me. It affects my students, my babies, my families, and my community. I am proud to say that I am part of the ambassadors and that together we will go through a journey. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to have open, honest, and safe conversations as we share and learn together by schools making equity plans, the unity and equity trainings for staff, and especially for us as administrators. Jefferson County Schools will educate and train our staff to better understand our students and families as we continue to care, love them, and serve them. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
I love that. Thank you, Heather. I love that she said journey, because it is a journey and it's one that we're doing together. All right, now Heidi from Jefferson High School, EL teacher.
Hi, and thank you for having me here tonight. Heather, I'm glad you had something written down, because I do too, and it makes me less nervous to just kind of read it like you did, so thank you. I've been with Jefferson County Schools for 20 years. I'm an English language teacher at Jefferson High School. I'm a mother of 3 who've graduated from Jefferson High School, and I graduated from there myself. So my experience as a summer ambassador, I love that we had to, Tanya helped us set the tone and trust in order for us to have courageous conversations, and that's what we strive to do in our classrooms too. We should be, and it's really important when talking about cultural proficiency and equity and inclusion, because those are tough conversations and it can be very frightening. But if you feel secure, like I feel here tonight, trying to remember the tone and trust, you can be honest and convey your feelings. I also want to stress the introspection that we have to do to look inside of ourselves and realize our biases, and that's what we did in our training as well. And I realized that I've been on the sidelines for some groups without even realizing it. And I also realized we have so much rich history that is left out of our teaching and learning. I learned so much in one day I had no idea about. I feel a lot of pride and compassion, honor, humility, and enthusiasm to be a cultural unity ambassador with Tanya and our team. And I thank my lucky stars that Tanya came into our lives to guide our courageous conversations that are well overdue. Thank you, Tanya. And why do I go deeper into equity and inclusion? I care for all people, animals, and nature, and feel that life is a beautiful, sacred blessing. I want all people and children to have the opportunity to live their best life, to live a sweet life. I've made working with cultures my life's work through language teaching, but I can do so much more. I'm grateful for this chance to spread my passion and empathy for others through my connections within our school system and our community, so that we can create a more loving, embracing, and healthy existence for our children, our county, our state, nation, and world. Our kids need us to lead the way towards justice, fairness, respect, inclusion, and security, so that they may flourish. And I want all kids to succeed and know that they are valued and loved just the way they are. Thank you so much.
Wow, I'm so glad that you can't see me up close so you see these tears. Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last one. Wow. Wow. Okay, I'm gonna get it together. Laura Miller is the art teacher at Wildwood Middle School. And again, Laura, if you're ready, I'm gonna hush, but just so grateful for these teachers in various programmatic levels and, you know, departments and ways that they serve our students and our community, for them to come out and be willing to be transparent after we increased, so we had a high trust, low fear climate. And that's that transformational space where understanding can occur and we can be restorative in our conversations, where we repair harm and we build trust. So Laura, saving the best for last. We're ready for you.
Sorry, my husband is making a lot of noise in the house. We're remodeling. So also too, thank you for letting us have a platform tonight to speak with all of you about being a cultural unity advocate. We are learning a lot with Tanya, and I think along the way, it is really hard to be introspective and look within and say, yes, I'm biased against many different things. I've been doing a little research in my own kind of culture and my background and my history. And the more you learn, the more you understand. And that is what our training has been about for the last week for our Thursday and Friday sessions. And we were given a great book to read. Ms. Hunter gave us amazing information with documentaries to watch. And I've been watching those, and they're just so riveting to know and see how people really treat one another and how that has happened throughout the course of history, and how now as representatives and advocates, it's really important to reach out to everyone, no matter what their religion or culture or race or what their preferences are. And our students are probably the most important place to start, our kids. A lot of families here tonight are represented, and I know many of you have children within the school system. And I think that now that we understand with our dialogue with Tanya, that it's okay to open up and begin with ourselves and share our stories, and then permeate throughout with our students in class, let that resonate with them, and to let them know that it's okay if you're poor. Many of us have been there. It's okay if you don't have the newest clothes or the most beautiful shoes in the world. That's okay, because for you, something else might be more important, like taking lessons for band or soccer or something like that. So what we're learning is that no matter where you are in life, it's okay. It's okay to speak of that. It's okay to share your knowledge and your abilities and have a discussion and have an open forum with students. And it's really important for us to develop a kinship and a mutual respect, not only with ourselves as adults, because if we're not going to make it there, we're not going to be able to relate that information to our students and our kids. So it's really important for us to be able to be kind of raw, is what I call it, because you're just opening up your nerves, and people are, you know, kind of pressing on those nerves that you're nervous about it. And you may not want to say, hey, I'm from, you know, I have family from India and I really don't know a lot about it. And that was kind of denied to me. I don't have that information. So the basic need for all of humanity is reciprocal. And it's really important that we start small and now we can go larger and share these experiences and our own souls with our students and our kids and show appreciation, humility, and love and kindness to them. And that is just the most simple, basic place to start. And we've lost that because we're always worried about the scores, tests, the grades, and sometimes that shouldn't matter. Sometimes what is more important is the relationships that we've built with our students. And to see them be happy and loved and appreciated is more important than some of the other things that maybe we're too one-sided on attaining. So being a cultural unity rep has given us an opportunity to say, hey, you know, it's okay to be human. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to have these challenging conversations, to reach out to others. None of us are the same, and none of us ever will be. And just to appreciate us for who and what we are. I think Tanya has really led us in believing that truth and knowing that we can do this one day at a time, one class at a time, one person at a time. So we're looking forward to doing this and see the progression of this work within Jefferson County with our kids because they deserve it. Thank you.
Wow. And so you see, they mention my name often, but truly this was a circle experience. And so there were varying degrees of expertise and experiences in ways that we all were able to learn from one another. And these are representations of the teachers right here in Jefferson County. And that makes my heart happy. So relationships is foundation to the work that we do, and we cannot go where we won't lead. We can't lead where we won't go. So back to my presentation, I'm almost done. Thank you guys so much. And here we go. I'm sharing the screen. So with that being said, let me move my thing out the way here. I'm going to put this back in presentation mode. Here is the vision of the Cultural Unity and Equity Department. You'll see that the Department of Cultural Unity and Equity strives to provide quality programs. We want to make sure that our students are connecting in meaningful ways across differences. We want to make sure that all of them are seen and valued and heard in ways that they see one another. And so as we move from awareness, we're learning that, yeah, we saw them before, but how do they see themselves? And do we see them like they see themselves? Do we see the value that they bring into our classrooms? And so that introspective, inside-out approach is right there in our mission statement. Our department will implement and monitor policies and procedures that enhance cultural diversity, encourage meaningful conversation, because that's where it starts. It's having that high trust and that low fear climate, as well as making sure that all students are provided significant multicultural education. Why? Because it benefits us all. So, as I end my presentation, here's the definition to culturally responsive teaching by one of my mentors, which I mentioned, Gary R. Howard, amazing guy, has an amazing book, several books. Look, just Google them, it'll come right up. We want to, in Jefferson County, teach and learn in such a way that more of our students, across more of their differences, are achieving at a higher level and are engaging at a deeper level more of the time without giving up who they are. And so here are just a couple of pictures of things that we did in the spring before that COVID-19 dismissed us out of the life that we once knew. Okay. Wildwood Middle School multicultural activity. The kids were fully engaged. Kudos to the administration at Wildwood. They supported it, the teachers, all the way, just on all programmatic levels, every department. Everyone bought into this, and that really aided into the success of it. South Jefferson Elementary, we were learning how to celebrate ourselves and others, and that is a big part of the work of cultural unity. We see you and we see ourselves. No one loses value. Every single teacher has a unique experience and heritage that adds to the overall mix of diversity. Diversity is not just black and brown people. It is everybody. It's not just race or gender. It's language, it's body type, age, ability. I mean, I could go on and on forever. It's varying degrees of differences. And then one more from Heritage Week at Wildwood Middle School. Students had a blast with tribal paint, And so Jefferson County, yes it is. It's a school. Jefferson County Schools is a place where everyone belongs, where we're all united and we all have a voice. And how do we keep going there? Well, it's going to be a continuous process of continuing and building. So the pandemic brought us an opportunity for some equity checks. And one of those is in restorative practices. Now, restorative practices has to do with the tool that we're using with our athletic coaches. We started a campaign back in the spring where we were giving coaches, athletic coaches, volunteer coaches, parent coaches, the tools that they need to repair harm and restore relationships after conflict. And so again, it thrives off of this desire to build community through respect and mutuality, and understanding the roles that we play and giving us tools so that we can navigate difficult conversations, even when our adrenaline is at its highest. We don't want to do harm. And so we're excited about those restorative practices because they also are great tools to use in our classrooms, at home, with our families, our teenagers, Lord help me, with our parents and caregivers. Really, really awesome stuff there. Also, we're going to continue building with our virtual platform. Everybody's talking virtual coming this fall, right? So many districts across the United States are getting ready. We've already engaged our parents and our community and our staff and students virtually. But we want to make sure that we are recognizing with an equity lens how much culture is programmed into the brain and how we can increase the intellectual capacities of our marginalized learners by tapping into their funds of knowledge based on neuroscience. So culturally responsive teaching is way more than inspiring a student who may be a Latino or Latina with some facts, from their heritage. No. Instead, we are showing our respect for the first teachers, meaning their parents, their moms, their dads, their grandparents, their communities, and accessing those ways of learning and those multiple literacies and linguistics abilities that they bring into our classroom. We don't see that as a detriment. Instead, we celebrate it and we learn from it and we integrate it in what we're doing. Also, assessing opportunity gaps. How do we do this? The leadership approach. We can't lead where we won't go, right? So we're going to also not only just assess the student and look at the student, but also look at ourselves, right? Because those two are mutual, right? They're not unidirectional. It should go both ways with that assessment. And as an introspective part of cultural proficiency and what the summer ambassadors did, it was all about looking inside. No shame or blame, just looking, checking your blind spots. I have blind spots. I have biases, and being aware of those and how that can unconsciously play out in my classroom as I interact and build relationships, which is the foundation of our work with our students. And then the last two, building. We're building. We're already having meaningful conversations in our district. We've already putting in place our summer ambassadors and our cultural unity advocates. We're already displaying signs and measurable data that include cultural competence and leadership. And then future-ready virtual learning with more inclusive and diverse curriculum. I'm excited to be working with Mr. Dilly and the total department and SOMO and all of the programmatic levels, coaches and coordinators, Dr. Gibson, Dale Teague, the families, the communities. This is a partnership at heart. And finally, the journey continues. I'm channeling my inner Oprah. Yes, I transitioned into teaching from broadcast. You might have seen me once or twice reporting the news for Fox 5. Who knows? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But anyway, the journey continues. And we are so excited about doing it together, understanding that it's a journey. It is not a marathon. It is not a sprint. Sorry, it's not a sprint. No shortcuts here. It is a marathon. And it's something we're excited to be doing together, even as we reimagine school and how we're going to do what we have to do as we prepare to safely reopen schools. And I'm done. Thank you guys so much for your time and your attention and this opportunity to share in this way.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Lewis. We really appreciate the presentation. And I know it took a long time to get you, but I'm glad you're finally here in Jefferson County with us. So, and I won't point out the fact that in your first slide, you put your son closest to the cheetah mouth, but I'm assuming it's because of the fact that teenagers are more agile than us grown-ups, and we'll just go with that. Do any fellow board members have any comments or questions for Ms. Lewis on her presentation? And thank you also for the other members of the group that gave us their testimonials for it.
This needs to be, pardon me, this needs to be put on the TV and put through so the whole county can look at it. This is good.
You did a great job.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Cable. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
You're welcome. You deserve it.
No other comments or questions? Well, Ms. Lewis, you're getting off easy tonight. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda is the special education presentation.
Yes, that's exciting. I'm not sure, following Ms. Lewis, if we are going to be that good. But no, welcome, welcome. We're very excited to come to you this evening. We'd like to first thank you for taking the time to allow us to present to you an overview of our department's goal and objectives, developing through our reflective review of our strength and our areas needing improvement. You have before you our PowerPoint, which I'm going to share. And let me know if you see it.
It's up there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm like, oh no, not a movement there. Very good. This is our PowerPoint, and with me this evening are several of our team members. I'd like to introduce you that they're out there, believe it or not, I know and believe it. Christy Horning is there with our lead IEP consultant, Dr. Miriam Boucher, our school psychologist, Megan Hendricks, our autism consultant, and Donna Leek, Judy Burgess, our teachers of the Lolly House, Kim Godfrey, our other team member at the Lolly House, Kathy Dingus, our pre-K IEP consultant, and Tina Nace, our Medicaid secretary. At this time, we're going to go over, we would like to share our department's goals to enable students with disabilities to successfully develop their fullest potential by providing FAPE and compliance with IDEA. Below you'll see our objectives. As we go through them, I'll go through them quickly for you. Implementing ongoing child fight systems, providing appropriate service to all students with disabilities, providing training opportunities for staff, providing transitioning services that are designed to facilitate movement from school to post-secondary activities, providing training opportunities to parents and families, and promoting compliance with documentation of student records. We would now like to share with you an overview of where we are currently with meeting our goals and objectives, and where we need added support for improvement. Support that can be given to our stakeholders within our schools and to our families across Jefferson County.
Good evening. As you can see on slide 3, Jefferson County Schools currently serves 8,942 students. Of those, 1,247 students have been identified as having a disability needing supports through an IEP. This number has slightly declined over the past 2 years. However, the needs of our students and families has not. Looking at the various exceptionalities, we are seeing an increase in students who have been diagnosed with autism and those students with increased social emotional needs. Both populations of students require substantial resources and specially designed supportive instruction to facilitate overall growth and achievement. Looking now at slide 4, you can see some of the legislative initiatives that have brought about changes in the supports given to students. Since 2017-18, schools have been provided a multi-tiered system of support for all students. Intervention has been provided for remediation and enrichment of specific skills prior to students becoming identified as needing special education services. The county interventionist, with guidance from Dr. Hetzel, Tara Mahoney, and I, met during the 2019-20 school year and finalized a cohesive document for the provision of services to all students. Secondly, schools are now able to provide both integrated and co-taught classes, each allowing for a percentage of special education students to be served with their typical peers. And finally, the First Step Act was established. The Act gave a clearer definition of dyslexia and its impact on mastery of English language arts skills.
Now, as you look at slide 5, you can see the pupil services has met or exceeded many of the state performance plan indicators listed on our annual desk audit report. These are areas of strength within our county, covering percent of youth with IEPs that impact. Dropping out high school, percent of students with disabilities participating on our statewide assessment of ELA and math, our percent of students with disabilities participating on alternate statewide assessments, the percent of students with disabilities proficient on our statewide assessments in math, the rate of suspension and expulsion of greater than 10 days for our students with disabilities, as well as our students with disabilities by race and ethnicity. Percent of students with IEPs for 6 through 21 inside regular class led less than 40% of the day. These have been met. Percent of children aged 3 through 5 with IEPs attending a regular early childhood program and receiving the majority of the special education related services in the regular early childhood program, and the percent of children aged 3 through 5 with IEPs attending a separate special education class, separate school, or residential facility. We are far below what the state has allowed. We would like to now to address 3 specific areas needing improvement within the 2021 school year. As we turn to this slide, recently we were found to be disproportionate with our Caucasian students placed in an outside agency placement. A comprehensive coordinated early intervening service plan was created to help us begin to correct this finding. Completion of our root cause analysis provided us with valuable information to begin changing this outcome. We have determined the contributing factors leading us to the place students outside of our school system to include a lack of embedded professional development opportunities, lack of parental training and support, appropriate use of methodology related to specific disabilities, proper tools to evaluate students' needs leading to more prescriptive teaching opportunities, and consistent programming and services provided to our students. Additional factors beyond our control have also led to the decision of a more restrictive placement for some students. These include positions filled by long-term substitute staff and increases in specific disability populations, as mentioned earlier. In order to address these issues, we have written a plan approved by the Office of Special Education and Student Support that will address the issues outlined on slide 6. We will be meeting and working with state coordinators to increase our abilities to provide students with educational opportunities that meet their needs with Jefferson County schools. The Cceis plan focuses on the following areas: an addition of a board-certified behavioral analysis, a creation of a parent education resource center, implementation of positive behavior interventions and supports, training, and programming provided by a PBIS coach, use of tools and specific data collection documentation, ABA training opportunities given to staff led by the BCBA. Not only does this address Indicator 5C, it addresses our needs in Indicator 5A and 8. At this time, I would like to introduce to you Megan Hendricks, who is our autism consultant and our BCBA in training.
Hi, Jessie Farmer is our BCBA currently for Jefferson County Schools, and she has served in that role in the past year. Within the role, she mainly assisted with functional behavior assessments and the development of behavior intervention plans due to the level at which they were requested. While this is helpful and necessary for students as a part of MTSS, BCBAs are able to assist students and staff considerably more given the time and availability. Specifically, BCBAs can develop and provide supervision for applied behavioral analysis therapy. ABA is typically aimed at teaching replacement behaviors for maladaptive ones and using data analysis as the primary grounds for making program decisions. Typically, when a student's behavior has escalated above what Jefferson County can accommodate, they are referred to a private placement out of county, such as Grafton or Aurora. Oftentimes, at these placements, students are provided with ABA therapy to address their behavioral, social, and communication needs. Unfortunately, our students served in private placements are not around their typical peers, often have long bus rides to school, and are potentially exposed to worse or different problem behaviors. Additionally, transitioning students back from placement is considerably difficult, as we often cannot replicate what they require to be successful. Hiring additional BCBAs and providing specialized ABA therapy within the school system could proactively address communication deficits and maladaptive behaviors, preventing some students from requiring outside placement. In addition, providing ABA therapy can also assist some students transition back to Jefferson County by providing a similar level of intervention and support that they receive in a private placement.
We believe that by implementing our plan, we can begin to increase the ability of our staff to enable them to provide appropriate instruction and supports to our students and increase the number of students inside the regular class 80% or more of the day. I do want to take a moment to tell you that Jessie does send her best. 2 days ago, though, she gave birth to twins, so she was unable to be here this evening with us. As we look at slide 7, we want to showcase our Lolly House program as an example of the success our students have when we are able to have them remain within our schools, creating the positive community experience that's shared across Jefferson County. To speak about these services, we have Donna Leake, Judy Burgess, and Kim Godfrey here from the Lolly House. Ladies, whenever you're ready.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Good evening. We're excited to be starting our 4th year at Lolly House. We want to thank Dr. Gibson and Ms. Jones for supporting and standing behind our program. We're also very proud of the fact that we're the first post-secondary transition program in our state. Guests from WVDE have toured our facility on several occasions and have been very impressed with our program. Lolly House encompasses 3 main areas for instruction, including life, work, and community-based skills. Our goal is to prepare our students for adult life in the real world. Examples of life skills include functional reading and math, social skills, banking, and a huge part of our focus, household management. Our students learn skills involved in maintaining a household, including cooking and cleaning tasks. Here, several of our students prepare a meal and wash the dishes. Our students have also taken on major home projects such as remodeling. Learning takes place through real hands-on experience. Here, our students are renovating the kitchen and living room at Lolly House. This is Lolly House before, and this is Lolly House after. Examples of community skills include social skills, transportation, leisure activities, and community resources. Community trips involve learning what resources are available, how to access those resources, and how to interact and conduct business in appropriate ways. In addition to functional skills such as ordering and money management, development of personal and community relationships is critical to becoming a whole, well-rounded person. Here, our students have completed the functional learning and are enjoying relationship building with peers and staff. Examples of work-based skills include soft skills, work experience, assessment, and social skills in the workplace. Individual job experiences are matched with student interest and abilities, but we also do special job requests such as catering, delivery, cleaning, and assembly jobs as a whole group. On the left, our students work with Goodwill Industries to staff an event at the Apple Blossom Festival. Another student learns to mix concrete for a job at Lolly House. Partnering with Joyce White, our students cleaned a room after construction was completed at the bus garage. There are many factors that contribute to the success of this program. For example, having an actual house is crucial in helping our students generalize new skills to their own homes. Despite many requests to expand our program, we are currently at our physical capacity. Programmatic expansion will require additions to our facility and staffing levels. Even with these barriers, we look to the future with a plan to serve an increased number of students. This plan with additional staff and facilities consists of 4 areas. 3 areas of programming will serve adults with skills in the lower, moderate, and higher functioning range, and a 4th area of programming will serve students who are in their last year of the program and require extensive focus on job skills training and placements. Our data shows student progress, but for us, the greatest measure of success is the feedback from our parents and students. We would like to leave you with just a few examples of positive feedback we've received, including seeing goals being met, an increase in social interaction and independence at home, seeing a student progress to a level that changed a parental decision to have their son graduate early, pride and enthusiasm in a job placement, and wishing for more time in the program. Thank you, and I'll turn this back over to Christy now.
Thank you, Donna. Looking at slide 20, another area needing to be addressed is our percentage of students with disabilities proficient on statewide ELA assessments. As research tells us, the earlier we can identify students with dyslexia and/or a learning disability and provide them with appropriate intervention, services, and accommodations, the more successful readers they will become. We have determined the need for early identification. We will be supporting schools by providing a dyslexia screener to be given to all students starting in kindergarten. This informative data will provide our educators and interventionists with purposeful, meaningful data to provide specific instruction to our students. By doing so, students and families can begin working together at an early age to increase the likeliness of an increased ability to read and comprehend grade level text, allowing students to receive instruction in the least restrictive environment. Our goal is to increase the number of students who participate in receiving instruction with their general education in their general education environment. This will address indicator 5A on our ADA. With us tonight is Dr. Bechet, school psychologist. She will briefly speak to you about the topic of dyslexia and its impact on our students.
Good evening, everybody. Dyslexia is most associated with trouble learning to read. It affects a child's ability to recognize and manipulate sounds and language. Kids with dyslexia have a hard time decoding new words or breaking them down into manageable chunks they can then sound out. This causes difficulty with reading, writing, and spelling. Research indicates that 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. The chances are very high that some of us had dyslexia, or even one of our family members has dyslexia. 80 to 90% of children with learning disorders have it. The ramifications of not treating dyslexia affects a lot more than reading. Research indicates that challenges with dyslexia predispose children to anxiety and behavioral problems. It also ultimately impacts their peer interactions, their expressive language, social ability, family relations, and often they suffer from low self-esteem. Students who have dyslexia are often accused of not trying hard enough to learn to read. They may demonstrate avoidance of reading silently, reading out loud, writing, turning in assignments, answering questions, or even showing up for school. In addition, oppositional or angry outbursts when asked to do work can be very common. I want to share a story of a 3rd grade student that began acting out in the classroom. He was not being compliant, which was really not like him. He was having trouble reading and was very embarrassed. Many kids made fun of him when he was chosen to answer questions or read something in class. Fast forward a few years, he was cutting classes, was getting suspended, and ultimately acted out at school to avoid specific classes. He became known as the behavior problem student. Rather than the emphasis being on his low academic performance and his inability to read, it was all about his behaviors and acting out and lack of effort in school. His behaviors escalated to fighting, and by the time he was in the end of middle school, he had joined with the wrong group of kids doing the wrong things. By high school, he was expelled and went to juvenile detention. It wasn't until then that he was tested by a psychologist who administered a full battery and diagnosed him with dyslexia. A few years after that, he was suffering from depression and anxiety. It was so overwhelming for him that he overdosed. The importance of recognizing dyslexia and intervening with children with dyslexia can impact the course of their lives. These children are our future, and we need to invest in them to ensure that they are equipped with the necessary tools to be successful in society. By administering dyslexia screeners as early as kindergarten, it is our goal to recognize students at risk as early as possible and implement early interventions to ensure their academic success, which inevitably will impact them socially, emotionally, and ultimately impact society as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shea. In order to facilitate growth for our educators, we request additional support to be given to schools' personnel and administrators by creating special education coaching positions. These positions will provide much-needed curriculum support, training opportunities to staff, modeling and implementation of best teaching practices, along with the creation of individual education plans. Consistency and equity provided to all grade level staff will be provided. Our third area we would like to address on slide 21 is the need to provide our pre-K special needs staff with increased training and support. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Kathy Dingus, our pre-K IEP consultant.
Any child that is receiving West Virginia Birth to 3 services or a parent referral is entitled to an evaluation to determine if the child meets criteria under Policy 2419. If the child does meet criteria, the county is required to provide services upon the child's 3rd birthday, regardless of classroom availability. During the 2019-2020 school year, the following strategies were implemented in addressing the deficits of the annual desk audit. A 3-day training was provided by Lisa Fisher and Rhonda Fisher from West Virginia Department of Ed, Office of Early Learning, to the Jefferson County pre-K teachers on the early learning standards and the early learning reporting system. I completed the training and am now able to train new preschool teachers in Jefferson County. I will also monitor the assessment of data during the yearly 3 windows of reporting. This information is used for the criteria of the annual desk audit. Jefferson County Schools also purchased the early learning standards and the early learning reporting system manuals in October of 2019 for all preschool teachers. I monitor enrollment and caseloads of preschool students for the determination and need of additional classrooms to accommodate preschool special education students. The following are strategies we would like to implement to address the deficits. Through the use of smaller classroom sizes, Jefferson County preschools will be able to progress toward meeting the social emotional needs, assist in meeting appropriate behaviors, and support early language, communication, and literacy skills of students which have been areas of noncompliance on the ADA for the past several years. We would also like to provide smaller classrooms where students with multiple disabilities and autism needs can be met, along with a smaller teacher to student ratio. West Virginia Policy 2419 does not recognize autism eligibility during the ages of 3 through 5, therefore limiting specific services. A pre-K special education coach to support the classroom special ed pre-K teachers, which would include classroom visitation and feedback. Currently, the primary job coach provides support for general education grades K through 2, pre-K through 2. Additional behavior support, such as a BCBA, in preschool classrooms to provide support for both special education students and general education students who demonstrate delays in social, emotional, and behavioral skills. Many students may not qualify for special education services, however, display behaviors that interrupt the educational process. As we see the increased trend of children exposed to drugs prenatally, environmentally, placed in foster homes, we're also seeing an increase in social emotional delays. Continued professional development on behavior management for preschool professionals and paraprofessionals. And lastly, have availability of placement for incoming preschool students that qualify for services.
Thank you, Kathy. As you can see, we have used current data, provided you with a reflective overview of our areas of strength and areas needing improvement. On the next few slides, you can see a projection of how we feel support can be given to our stakeholders. In phase 1, you can see the changes we are requesting for the current positions held at the county office. The changes reflect the need for additional contracted days to be added to positions outlined. Additional days are needed to provide time during summer months to meet with county level leadership to increase our knowledge of district-wide initiatives, complete and develop training opportunities for staff in conjunction with the Office of Teaching and Learning, complete compliance-driven initiatives, and establish new procedural guidelines in conjunction with other county leaders. Without the ability to meet, reflect, design, and implement proactive changes, we will not be able to grow. Currently, the director position is the only 261-day contract. One person cannot meet the needs of this department outside of the 200-day work schedule. We feel the need for a team to be established who can work together during the entire year, but more importantly, during the summer months. The creation of a team is needed to make change and growth within our department. Additional job responsibilities will be established for the lead IEP coordinator, IEP compliance consultant, and the IEP consultant for overseeing and working directly with the special ed coaches, staff, and students. The increase in contracted days for our secretary in charge of Medicaid billing is needed to ensure the enhance the processes so that we can bill for and receive appropriate Medicaid funding. I would like now to introduce you to Tina Nace, who is our part-time Medicaid secretary.
Good evening. The annual Medicaid reporting that we conducted in December of 2019 indicated approximately 45% students receiving school-based direct services such as speech, OT, PT, and psychology were Medicaid eligible. For the FY 19-20 school year, approximately $55,000 in Medicaid billing payments have been received to date. We are still processing year-end billables, so this number will be increasing as we finalize the closeout processes. These monies are in addition to the Medicaid cost settlement and are utilized to supplement services throughout the school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. In addition, the team got together and through their analysis, we're asking for a financial secretary or bookkeeper to be added to our department. Pupil Services does not have a financial secretary. The current job is shared between the director and the Pupil Services secretary. In order to focus our attention on programs for students, dyslexia, PBIS, ABA therapy, our gifted students, virtual school, and our parents' needs, we are requesting financial staffing help. The financial responsibilities of this department are crucial for determining how we can meet the needs of our schools, students, and parents, all while working within our budget.
Lastly, with the addition of the Parent Education Resource Center, we can begin to build important relationships with our families. Working together by providing training, supports, and knowledge to our parents, we can provide all with an increased ability to partner together and enable student growth and achievement in all areas of need, leading our students to become happy, healthy, and productive members of our community. On slide 23, we have outlined the additional supports needed for our school-based personnel through phase 1 support. The 3 newly created positions, the BCBA, the Parent Education Resource Center, and the PBIS coach, were established to meet the needs through our Cceis Plan. The funding for these positions have been allocated through the financial needs written within the plan. The special education coaches are vital to our school-based staffing needs. As we have outlined earlier, we feel that added support within our schools for our stakeholders will increase their abilities to meet our department goal and objectives. The addition of coaches will not only help our teachers improve upon their practices, but it will increase their ability to meet the needs of our students by providing them with appropriate education, utilizing the strategies and instructional practices that have been proven to benefit students with disabilities.
We are looking at a projected phase 2, continued to support school-based personnel. Projections indicate the need for increased behavioral supports and specific programming needed to be overseen by the addition of a third BCBA. As Jessie and Megan have informed you of her duties earlier, we can see that we will need added support to provide the necessary services to our students, staff, and their families as our numbers increase.
Our growing population of pre-K students warrants the creation of coordinator of pre-K special needs position. Using the data from the past 4 years, the trend is showing us that we are increasing our students with special needs, along with the intensity of disabilities in pre-K each year. This position would also allow for continued evaluation of children transitioning from West Virginia birth to 3 services and parental
we lost her. Referrals during the summer months. Lastly, as we moved in the direction of early intervention for students who may be determined to have dyslexia, we are asking you to consider creating a position for a dyslexia specialist. The position will oversee all training provided to coaches and staff and work closely with the Office of Teaching and Learning to develop and implement appropriate early interventions. We believe if the specific early interventions and services and accommodations are given throughout our students' educational years, we will see significant changes in their academic and social emotional successes. As you can see, we have provided you with the data-driven rationale for the proposed changes. We want to continue to build a culture of success for our students with disabilities. In order to meet their needs and increase their ability to reach the fullest potential, we must learn and grow within our department. We need your support and help to reach our goal and our objectives. We believe in our staff and students and have a vision for improvement and continued successes. The final 2 slides contain specific information about the use of cameras in our school and our extended school year program. At this time, the implementation of cameras in our special needs classrooms have been worked on by myself and actually more Jen Rowan, our Director of Technology, I was gonna say, and has arrived from below. Okay, it was completed so far. What she has completed is we have gone over the criteria, selection process, and decision on placement of cameras and policy. The cameras have arrived. 3 bids went out for cabling, and Alpha Technologies did win the bid due to the low price and the fact that they had had good experience with them in the past. The signage, I believe, is ordered and I believe it was from Vital Signs. It comes in English, Spanish, and Braille. And unfortunately, at this time, installation is pending on the vendor availability. And as I talked to Jen, that had not been known as of yet. Professional development will be created on this issue, on this subject, and disseminated to principals. At this time, we will move on to ESY, and Christy, if you would like to take this one away.
Sure. On our last slide, you'll see our current ESY program documentation. In the past, students in need of ESY services have been provided these services through a face-to-face engaged model of instruction. Over the past 3 years, we have served approximately 50 to 60 students across all disability exceptionalities, providing them with both academic and related services. Staff have provided instruction using both county-approved grade level curriculum and resources, as well as using the approved curriculum for students receiving an alternate diploma provided by N2Y, our unique learning systems and News to You. Educators provide a continuity of instruction to each student based on the critical skills denoted in their IEPs. This year, we were a little more challenged, and we were charged with providing students with virtual instructional services. These services did mirror what they had been provided during the COVID-19 school closure. Students have received both group and individual instructional opportunities and related service instruction. Staff continue to use the Google Classroom, Seesaw, and virtual meeting platforms to create workspaces containing lessons and resources given to students and meeting conferences. While our overall numbers are down this year, parents did indicate the desire to have their children participate in lessons provided to them virtually. At the conclusion of ESY, which ended today, I will be able to look at the data to determine how best to meet the needs of our students for the next year. Regardless of our situation at that time, we will meet the needs of our students by providing them with opportunities to be successful and safe.
We would like to thank you for your time this evening. We know we have given you a lot to consider. We greatly appreciate the time you have allowed us to speak to you and the efforts made in the future to help us continue to increase our overall success for providing our stakeholders with an appropriate educational opportunity, leading us to build upon a culture of academic and social emotional success, leading us to the greater outcome of our community.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. This is quite a packet. I don't know if any other board members have any discussion or questions, but I have a couple myself.
Whenever you're ready, I have a lot.
Okay, let me just ask a really quick one that's easy. Let's start with the low-hanging fruit here real quick. The Medicaid part-time secretary going to full-time, when we were doing it through Epic, was it just one person doing Jefferson, Berkeley, and Morgan County?
I was Terry Stewart, who retired.
But it was one person doing 3 counties? Is that?
Not everything for the county. Like what she did for us was the billing. She didn't do the whole process.
Okay. Ms. Joy, did you have a question?
Oh, yeah, I have a few. So the first thing, you're asking for a dyslexia specialist. You have no idea how many students have dyslexia. You haven't started testing them. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, she broke up.
She said that how can you hire a dyslexia specialist if you don't know how many students have dyslexia because the testing has not been done yet?
Correct. That was in our phase 2. That's not in our phase 1. I know we put a lot of information out there. Our phase 1 is actually to start the screeners and working this year. Actually, we just met with Fran Bowman to discuss this year.
So you're not asking for this dyslexia specialist for this year, maybe
No.
in the future?
Yes.
Okay.
When this was
Okay.
asked of us, we asked to make our projection of where we see special education going and what our big plan is.
Okay, so what's the relationship between the Lighthouse and your whole presentation? It seems like it was fit in there, so I don't understand the purpose of that presentation.
Which one? I missed the middle of what you said.
The Lally House,
Oh,
what's
okay.
the purpose of that? The
Lally House,
presentation.
that is part of
Yeah,
the special
why did you
education.
put that in the middle?
She said, why was the Lolly House in the middle of the presentation?
It was part of giving us, it was attached to the part that was part of our successes, the things that we have thrived at.
Okay, so it's nothing to do with you're going to be using any of the services there. You're just,
Well, we use them with our students. That is a special education. I'm not sure what the question is.
The Lolly,
because,
yeah, the Lolly House is part of the special education department. It's just a
Yes.
segment.
Yes,
but
I
I'm
am.
saying, so for example, students with dyslexia have nothing to do with the Lally House in general.
No,
So
ma'am.
that's all I was asking. So it
Oh,
sounds
okay.
like you just gave a presentation of something that's working, like you said. Okay, so if we could go back to slide number 2. Your slide number 2.
Okay. Hang on.
Many times, I've heard it at least twice, so maybe 3 times it was mentioned that you have an increase in special needs students. There's a higher demand. Every year it's increasing. Is that correct? That's one of the reasons why you're asking for more services, correct? 2 people said that for sure. You were one of them. I just want to clarify.
Yes, do you mean the increase in the autism students?
Slide. If you look at your slide number 2, after your who you are, the next slide where you have the data.
Right. 3.
Yeah, all those show the same percentage of kids in special ed. There's been no change in every year. It's all 14%.
The change is in the exceptionalities is what we were showing.
Okay.
So if you
that wasn't specified. So that's what needs more clarification. So you've had the same percentage of kids in special ed every year for the past 4 years, but you're saying now it's a different diagnosis. That's the only thing that's changed. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, that is what Christy said.
Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure that's correct. I mean, they weren't listed as percentages, which makes it difficult for the observer. I did go through and find the percentages, of the numbers presented, and I saw that they were all 14%. So
correct.
You're saying that it's a certain disability that's increasing. And what are those that are increasing?
If you look at the slide, the autism have gone from 70 students to 91, and as well as the other health impaired, which includes our autism students as well as our kids in PMI, have gone from 180, we dropped to 167, and from last year we went from 168 to 193.
Okay, so if you're having such an increase with students with autism, why not hire an autism teacher instead of a coach? Because it's my understanding that these coaches, especially at Jefferson, they're only there maybe a half day, and so they never really get to develop a relationship with the kids. This is just my, it's just an idea, but why wouldn't you, hire an autism specialist if you're having such an increase in that disability?
If I can speak to this just for a second, we historically have had difficulty hiring teachers that are certified as autism teachers. And so given that we have a open position right now and a position where teachers are not or may not have the strategies in their toolbox to work with students, our hope is that the coach can be able to increase their abilities to use those practices that are known to improve their behaviors, their communication, and their academic social skills.
So what are the qualifications of the coach? If they're not, trained in autism, what are they for?
They would be special education teachers.
Okay, so you have a special education teacher. How much more training is needed for autism? It sounds like what you really need is a teacher, because that's just my opinion. But
well,
then, just based on what you've said, that's what it sounds like.
Well,
and,
the coaches,
huh? Were you going to say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
the coaches came from the fact that we listened to the board, and the board made sense that our staff is also in need of sitting with IEPs and making them across the board, having the same services, having the IEP meetings run the same, as well as the fact that last year we had 17 long-term subs in special ed.
So,
created an imbalance.
Yeah, well, that doesn't necessitate a coach over a teacher, number one. And number two, you said in your report that the reason that you are out of compliance is because you had subs. So why don't you advertise for teachers, certified, just at least advertise them? How is it going to change if you don't have teachers available? How is anything going to change? If you're saying that you don't have enough certified teachers, but you're saying, okay, well, we're going to, so you're saying instead you're going to hire a coach, which is even less qualification, it sounds like, but then you said they're certified in special ed. So why not just hire certified special ed teachers if you can?
We would love
Because
to.
you're claiming that your whole problem is that you don't have enough of them.
Mrs. Loring, we work very closely with Mrs. Loring, and actually for our audit, I believe we advertise several times a year for special educators. And unfortunately, that is an HR department, but we check in frequently, and if no one certified applies,
all right,
I would be happy to, whatever it takes to get certified teachers here. We would love that.
Well, if
that
I may
might
add,
change. Go ahead.
That challenge is not unique to Jefferson County schools either. There's a special education and autism teacher shortage nationwide. There's an attempt every year to post and try to find certified teachers in this area, and it's extremely difficult. There are not enough certified teachers in special ed in this country in order to fulfill our positions.
Well, it's even more difficult if we have a policy that allows us to hire subs over teachers. So maybe when that gets fixed, it'll be a little easier. That's one thing. But if the goal is to get special ed teachers and you're claiming that this coach is a special ed teacher, then what's the difference between hiring a coach over a special ed teacher? Why are you hiring for a coach instead?
what we've been trying to do is obviously face the reality of the shortage of special education teachers. That will not defer or restrict us from continuing to seek out highly qualified special education teachers. But what this board has asked the special education department and myself to do is prepare a plan for the realities that we currently have, which is often a resurgence of a number of substitutes, a large number of turnover. And so the thought process behind the team's decision was to provide a coach that could assist all of that transition in order to create a great deal more of stability as well as consistency in the responses to the kids' needs across the district. And that's the hope of this position and the goal of what they've put here this evening. Some of these positions are not on the agenda this evening, but what they are hopes and plans to try to move forward and responding to the continuing challenges and changes that are occurring in the district. And so our hope is this evening is that you'll support what we've asked for in this evening to move us in the right direction. But we know as time proceeds, these are only a small step in the grand scheme or hope of addressing all of the needs and growing challenges within the district.
So I still don't see if you have that a qualified coach who's really a special ed teacher. I still don't understand the calling it a coach, except you're saying they can just go around and help. But as I mentioned before, when I talked to teachers, they said that they would really prefer to have a teacher. It's like at Jefferson, they have a half-time autism teacher. They could really use a full-time autism teacher instead of that coach that's only there part-time. That's part of the thing. And while I'm talking about Jefferson, I'm wondering about that position at Jefferson. There was the special ed teacher who became an administrator. So it sounds like there is a full-time special ed position available, correct, already? Is that the one you were mentioning that you're going to hire for? Whoever.
What she's referencing is Mr. English's movement to an assistant principal, and that position will be refilled as that vacancy has now been posted. I don't know if it's been posted yet or not. Mrs. Loring could speak to the posting, but that position has not been eliminated or modified to my knowledge.
Okay, so it'll be a full-time special ed position available is what my question, because I understand that he's going to be doing half of the day as an administrator, half of the day as a SAT coordinator. So is it just him moving in. That's why I'm asking. I just wanted to make sure that they're still going to get their special ed teacher and not just a half-time special ed teacher.
We'll need to table that and get back to you on it.
Okay. And then another issue is this 15% that hasn't been talked about, that I was trying for 2 weeks, trying to get members of the board and the board office to provide some clarity. There's the numbers on the state website, West Virginia Department of Education. If you click enrollment, Zoom, the data is highly improbable, is what I discovered. So I, investigated, and the state agreed it was improbable. And so then I was told by Mr. Dilly, no, they always mess it up, and he gave me some new numbers. Well, then I explained to him how those numbers he gave were not accurate. So we're back to these numbers again that were in the presentation that show every year 14%. I mean, that alone is highly improbable. I mean, if you're getting 14%, in Berkeley, they have 17%, 18% of kids in special ed, but in Jefferson County, every year, only 14% are in special ed. But what's more interesting is the number of whites, blacks, Hispanics, and multicultural, all are 14%. So either the data's wrong, which it sounds like it could be. So I had explained to Mr. Dilly, if the state is using wrong data, whatever the word is, Jefferson County out of compliance. How a part of why we were considered out of compliance was based on this data. But it's possible that the data was wrong. And if that's true, then I would recommend that Jefferson County schools what is the correct data, because if you're using wrong data to fine us, which is basically what's happening, because now we have to take 15% of the special ed budget and use it in a specific area. It may be that you need to do that anyway, but at least it's not a black mark on Jefferson County's record. Plus, there's that 15% of funds that maybe you could use in a different way. I just think that there should be more clarity. You can't make these decisions about hiring when you have conflicting data, and especially data that's so blatantly questionable. And nobody can say where that data came from, but it was presented that this is the facts. These are the facts. But even the statistician for the state, when I contacted her, I said, this data is, it's statistically impossible. And she agreed, and they assumed that they did some miscalculating. So she spent the day trying to figure out where those numbers came from, and she concluded that, no, this is coming from Jefferson County. But Mr. Dilly has different numbers. And I think his numbers were more realistic, but I had, pointed out to him that some of he had errors in 2 out of his 5 columns, so it's hard to know what the actual data is. So aside from that, there's one more issue.
Why don't you let that go? You've been on this for the last 6 months. Get over it.
I just started. I'm sorry. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, if I may, before you finish that, I would like to speak to something you've said, and I want to clarify that what I was sharing with her is there are 3 platforms in which we pull data from, and there's a public side, which is Zoom. There's a private side, which is accessible to school employees, Zoom West Virginia E, as well as WEVIS itself, the West Virginia Educational Information System. And we have observed over the years that there is a disparity between those platforms sometimes, and I think part of the issue that she is speaking to is where the data extracted from the private site, which is available only to school employees, does have some differences or discrepancies from the public site. And so one of the things that I've done and what I've shared with you, and I do apologize, there was a couple of mistakes in that, and I'll send you the corrections of those in my oversight. But what we'll do is I always put there where that information comes from, because we've continued to see those challenges. Sometimes those things are different. And unfortunately, with the collection of data, it actually comes from a large body of folks. Some of our teachers insert that information. Some of that data comes from our schools, principals, secretaries, as well as some of the central office folks. And so there's multiple layers of this that produces the desk audit, and also creates what the state draws that information from. And so it is very challenging to determine always if that information is accurate as far as the calculations the state are making, because of the differences between what's posted on the public version versus what we see in our own private system. And that's what I was speaking to Dr. Joy about, some of the challenges that we face with that public versus private site.
But before you accept responsibility, it might be wise to get it straight, get the numbers straight. What is the real data? Because maybe, maybe we're not out of compliance. That's one thing. So, and if
I can answer some of that, I'll share that up. On my slide 3, what the numbers that you got was taken from our December 1 and October 1 count that we only see on our side. We don't get percentages. Those are the numbers that actually show up through our system. And that's what I shared for we track the exceptionalities. The Cceis plan that we got the letter in November, we have been to several trainings with the state. The Cceis plan and the disproportionality was from a law that was 2 years ago that was passed but never implemented. It finally got implemented, and every single state is going through this. Unfortunately for us, because of our population is 85% white, they did not have a subgroup to compare us to. For the formula, it's actually on a website that I can send to you, and I will share it with Dr. Gibson that she can send to you for you to have information. I was in the same boat as you in December and January, feeling that our data they were wrong. I took the data, I went through them, and unfortunately, because we do not have a subgroup in sending Caucasian students to an outside placement, they compared us to the average of the state. We did not get compared to our county, and apparently that is legal in the law of this bill or this law that was passed. So I can gladly forward that information to Dr. Gibson of actual website that takes you through the root cause analysis, the stuff that had to be completed, the umpteen sessions we had to go to and meet with the state and work with them specifically. They've hired outside help to run this. And Renee Eccles-Hardy is actually the one that runs the data and trickles it down to us. I understand wholeheartedly. I believe I fought very hard to say that we were not out of compliance.
Yeah, I understand that, but that's not what I'm talking about.
But that's 15%.
Really just talking about the general numbers that are showing up, that if it looks, to have every area 14%, anybody knows that that's highly unusual. So, there's a problem somewhere. This has been happening for years. The government, the state doesn't just come after you with one year of messing up. This is a pattern. And so maybe this data it's a simple question, like, here's our data, there's what the state shows, what's the discrepancy? Aside from that specific, the too many white students being sent out, because when anybody looks at that data, it looks like not enough Blacks and Hispanics are being identified, because you look at the socioeconomic level for white students, and it's 32%. For the whole county, Black students, 60%. And anywhere else in the country, there's a direct correlation between low socioeconomic level and the numbers in special ed. Yet, where are the rest of these Black kids or the Hispanic kids? So for that reason alone, it behooves somebody to go and get these numbers straight, because they don't look accurate. I mean, it's like I said, it's the odds. I mean, nowhere else in the country. I looked all over the state to find numbers like it, and I couldn't. I mean, I guess that's everything that I was going to say.
I have a concern, and my concern, are we still using the tier system at the elementary level?
Yes, MTSS, which they call it now multi-tiered. Yes, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Yes.
Yeah, I have a big problem with that system. We identify a child probably has a learning disability at late first grade, somewhere thereabouts, early second grade, and they go through those tiers, and therefore they do not get special ed services probably till 4th grade if they need them. And we've missed the sweet spot of those children learning how to read. Children learn how to read in K through 2, and then they read to learn in grades past that. And I have a great deal of difficulty with that lag of a year and a half, 2 years before we're identifying those students as learning disabled.
So Christy, I don't know if you wanted to speak to this or.
Mr. Osborne, you're absolutely correct, and it is a great concern of ours, and it's something that we feel very passionate about. We are working on trying to, number one, find those early identifications for children that we know may be identified as dyslexic later on. And our next step is to start and provide that evidence-based methodology for providing them what we call systematic, cumulative, multisensory instruction. And if we can get that to kids early on, we have a greater chance of providing them opportunities for success that they may not even need special education services. But it's going to take the identification, the interventions being given early on, and the work with our families to understand how to work with us to create that, to create that learning opportunity for those kids.
And we've been
since I've seen this system come in, I think we are wasting a great deal of sweet time that children need to learn how to read, and that is very frustrating.
Yeah, can I say something now? This test, so not all children will have dyslexia. So if they don't have dyslexia, they're going to be passed over, correct? Because the only test you're really going to give is for dyslexia. So this is not going to address Mr. Osborne's concern.
Well, it does to an extent, but it doesn't totally.
If they have dyslexia.
All right.
So and with the children that have dyslexia, yes, that is true. But not all of those children have dyslexia. And a lot of times when we could identify them early, we could get them up to close to grade level before they left the middle school because of individual help. But if we didn't get them till 4th grade, then we could not get them up to that level before they left us because we did not have the time to be able to work with them with teachers that are trained in learning disabilities to be able to help them to get to grade level.
We agree with you because that's the data that showed us, and we as well have been working since Dr. Dilly has been coming on to us, that we work closely with his team to go over the screeners and actually look at possibly using the Pfeiffer which will give us other data as well as a quicker data. I know we also had Dr. Boucher who researched many of them. I don't know if she's still here.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And it's actually one of the reasons why we wanted to administer a dyslexia screener. And it won't just address students who have dyslexia, because the screener that we chose, actually, it's a four-part test, and it analyzes children's reading skills, and it predicts their success years later into it. And the test can actually be given in the spring before children even enter kindergarten, as well as to kindergartners through 3rd grade. And this is going to be for all students, not just the ones that are at risk. And from it, we get wonderful data, we get profiles of the students, and it can be used to identify skills, not just for those who have dyslexia, but it can identify skills in need of intervention, monitor progress, predicts future reading achievement, and it contains like 4 reading subtests that can be administered to special needs, gifted, and developing students in grades pre-K to 3rd grade. So we know that dyslexia is a neurobiological disorder. So we know that research has shown that brain plasticity decreases through childhood. So it takes essentially 4 times as long to intervene in 4th grade as it does in late kindergarten because of the brain development and because of the increase in content for students to learn as they grow older. So that is our hopes by giving these dyslexia screeners. And the wonderful thing about it is that it provides information for each student, and it's given multiple times a year. It's given in the springtime, the fall, winter, 3 times a year. It monitors all that. There's also a report that's given for parents so that they can understand it. It's very parent friendly, and it provides a lot of different things that they can do. There's one for the school, there's one for essentially for the student that breaks it up into very detailed information profiles about the student. And we're looking at vocabulary, we're looking at phonemic awareness, we're looking at fluency, we're looking at phonics. So all these things give us data on the student, not just for those who are dyslexic, but those who have difficulties in certain areas, maybe just in the phonics, maybe it's just in the vocabulary. So it targets all these different areas, and then we can provide these interventions at an early age. We're not intervening later, like in 3rd grade, 4th grade, where it becomes so much harder to do so.
So will our students still have to go through this regimen of tiers? The screeners are fine, they sound great, but still do you have to chalk up so many tier sessions before we can qualify somebody?
The policy does require students to go through tier intervention before they can be identified for special education services. Mr. Osborne, when you were a principal, the tier sessions used to be, I believe, I want to throw out the number 100 sessions. It's not as many as it used to be, but they are required to go through, and if they do not show progress, increase the number of sessions, change the evidence-based, research-based strategies and programs that are used, and then look at identification. But before that, if we can get this information and we can truly target that intervention to those areas of need, we might not see those outcomes as bad as they could be. I mean, our hope is that given the information that we get them the intervention that they need, and hopefully not have to have as much of a gap in their skills.
Is this tier situation something from our state, Christy?
It is in policy 2419.
Okay, that is part of the problem, in my opinion, because we're losing precious time where a child is formulating how to read, and we need to somehow change that on a state level so we can quicken that, so we don't lose that time that's precious right then.
Right. It is a 9-week intervention cycle, and they must go through 2 intervention cycles before we can look at identification. Doesn't mean we can't, complete some testing, find out some additional information, work with children, but it is part of the policy and the specific learning disabilities team report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was going to just bring up one other thing then. So we don't really know the numbers. A lot of parents are saying they're going to go to homeschool. So it's hard to really predict all of these things given the current situation. That's another issue. And I mean, I would like to see, teachers actually in the classroom teaching these kids that are vulnerable, at risk. I guess there was one other thing. This thing about extending the school year, I don't understand when you're only open 4 days a week, but you work late during the summer, the special ed department. I know that I got an email back, but I sent an email, sorry, we don't work on Fridays or something. So that means that you're not really providing these services now for the students. You're saying that you'll do it if you get more funding. So what's happening now? Because when I read the letter from the state letting the school system know that they were out of compliance, unless somebody typed something wrong, it looks like that letter came last fall. There was mention of a training that Ms. Jones could attend in November. So it sounds like, somebody's been aware of these problems for almost a year. What's been happening? I don't understand. The date was cut off, so I don't know exactly when you got that letter, but I just, why is it taking a year? I'm just curious. Maybe it's just thinking out loud, but it's frustrating. And,
Christy and Cindy could potentially answer this a little more clearly, but you've asked two questions there. The extended school year program is something that the special education department sets up to provide additional services beyond the end of the school year. And that's not necessarily them doing that work. That's actually teachers that are hired to do that work with our students. And obviously this year, because of the COVID-19 situation, it's limited what we've traditionally done as services, but we have continued or made available those particular services beyond this traditional school year. The second component of that, Ms. Jones could probably speak a little more specifically to, because that notification did come in earlier in the fall, as well as the trainings that I know her and some of her team members have have participated in, and then worked with the development of a plan that was just recently approved back in late April or early May, I believe. And so this has been part of the state's process that we've been coordinating or working along with them as far as the process is concerned.
Correct, just to concur that we were notified in November, correct. The state sent out the letter. Following that, they said, yes, you will attend. So we attended the trainings, all of them. They gave us the step process, and the Cceis plan was to be implemented and created this year for next year. So this was actually managed by the state. We did all the steps they asked us to do.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I just have a couple. I think Ms. Dallas Lewis did a really good job of giving us the opportunity to, think of outside the box and have that safe space, and all those things she talked about, I think were wonderful. And part of the way I think about that too, and I know that most of or if not all of the department and all the department heads think that way as well. But when I look at the presentation, one of the things I want to see us look at through curriculum and instruction, and I think it's still a weakness that we have, is seeing special education as general education, and that it all messes together. The word regular education, we really haven't used in a long time. So I think we need to take the word regular, because then it connotates an irregularness to special education or children with exceptionalities. So being careful that even in our presentations, we use the right verbiage to try to make everyone understand exactly what it is we're talking about, I think is important. And it's a culture shift. It is a change. And as I said, some people have been doing it a long time. And so I think we need to get ourselves there. It's a small thing, but I think it does make a difference. So I'd like to see us, look to that piece as far as a starting point. Just a couple questions that I had. The First Step Act is that what you were referring to, Ms. Jones, that was implemented, but it was never followed? And is that something that the state of West Virginia implemented through the legislature, or that's a federal
law?
Federal law. Okay.
federal
Okay.
law.
It was just not implemented until
It
now.
just wasn't. Yes, we have been trying. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That's a very big passion of my staff. We have been slowly trying to get our way there.
Okay. And what made the decision for you guys to choose the trainer that you chose? I know that Ms. Bechet just shared a little bit about that, but what made that in the decision of looking at the dyslexia?
Screeners?
One more time.
The screeners?
Looking at the dyslexia program that you're looking at to identify kids.
We were talking about the screeners, correct. We actually looked at several. I know, Marianne, I don't know if you want to talk to that. We actually researched 3.
Actually 7. We looked at 7 different ones, and we looked at the pros and the cons. And the one that we chose, it's called the Predictive Assessment of Reading. We really loved it because it was teacher friendly, it was student friendly, and it provided us with the most data. And I'm a huge proponent of it because it provides data to teachers, it provides data to the student, and it also provides data to the family. And it comes up, it generates this report with graphs and data. So if you're a visual learner, if you like to read, depending on how you are, it provides all of that. And it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to do so. Now, some screeners aren't as in-depth as this one is. Some screeners are just completed by the teacher, which may not provide the best data. This one is actually completed by the student, and we can get detailed accounts of a lot of different areas. Like I mentioned, their vocabulary, their fluency, their phonics, all these areas that tell us if a student is dyslexic or if they're struggling with a learning disability in certain areas. So we really did examine a lot of different screeners, and we looked at a lot of different factors and took those into account. And we thought that the predictive assessment of reading would be the best, and we want to ensure that our students are getting the best. So we were definitely open to a lot of different screeners, but we heavily researched the ones that research showed were the most effective. And this was definitely one of the top 3 after we narrowed down from the 7.
And it was very good. We worked with I almost said CNI, my apologies. And we worked with them greatly, and their coordinators teamed with us, and we got together as a group, and then we brought it back to the team to decide. Like she said, we narrowed it down to the 3, and it was a vote, and we all agreed this is the screener that we wanted to move forward with for all students.
So I think it kind of is an all-encompassing question. I'm thinking at our multi-tiered support system that we have. As we do that, where do we find the strengths and weaknesses of that? It seems clear by what's being said, and I think we've said it for years. Pre-K and early intervention is where our money is going to show the best value, as evidenced by even with what Ms. Dingus has shared with us, that the 3 to 5 essentially isn't even recognized in that autism. Now, a parent clearly recognizes it, and as a parent who experienced that personally, it is evident, and it is extremely frustrating to have a speech and language even deficiency from 0 to 2, and then, or birth to 3. It's just essentially identified, and then you get nothing really until school starts. So if we want to see a decrease in our numbers, is our data showing that we need to put more money in that area, not in the coaches at the school level, where we're still going to be spinning our wheels, we're still going to be behind, we're still not going to be meeting the mark, and we've still already lost part of the population who is supposed to be able to read but never learned the pre-reading skills. Understanding as well that some kids cannot have the pre-reading skills that early, they're just not ready, and that's okay too, but we need to be able to identify that and know what that is or where that is. So when I looked at all the numbers, for me, I was looking at the data saying, in which of those areas do we see that we are being successful? And if our autism group, yes, we're growing in numbers, but are we successful in meeting those needs of those students? In that CD group with speech, which speech therapies, I know Cindy, we talked about this when we were talking about the Medicaid billing, which speech therapies are successful? How are we doing getting children released from the therapies because they're meeting those goals? So then we know we need more targeted intervention in this area. We need more targeted intervention in this area. So we can know, not just kind of throwing something at it. And I'm not saying that that was the intent here. I don't think that it is. I think everybody here is very well intended. But I still don't know that I feel really comfortable that we have a handle on where we are. And with the current group, or with the current conditions that we're in, and not even knowing, you know, the governor could pull the plug, we could be all virtual. So then will we have positions? Will we have people, even aides that are like our transportation aides? They usually take our students in, bring our students home. In the middle of the day, they're typically helping in a classroom. Can they help in special ed? Could we retrain them and help them to be able to do Medicaid billing? Now we've given our own staff skill set that they wouldn't have otherwise, that they may be able to post into another job, because we don't have the specific job we would normally have for them because we're doing virtual learning. I think that we need to get a little bit more creative with what are we doing with the people we have, and how is this going to happen? Through attrition, we may be able to take the other position and expand that to include that. We have a safety net right now, I think, through EPIC. We have somebody who retired, but we also have somebody who's well-trained, who already knows how to do Medicaid billing. I also don't know, I feel comfortable that we have our numbers with Medicaid billing that justifies a position. What's the data showing us with that we're even, you know, gaining any kind of ground monetarily, or is it even worth our time and effort to do that? Do we need to be looking for funds in other areas? I just still feel like there's an awful lot of questions. And then with Miss Dallas Lewis doing a great job with staff development, I need to know what kind of training in all of these different areas, whether it's autism or CD or other health impaired or whatever, what kind of training are our own teaching staff? If our goal is to bring more of these students back in the classroom, our teachers are completely overwhelmed with managing students with so many additional needs that many of them were never even trained in college on how to deal with. It wasn't part of the teaching environment. There wasn't an inclusionary model at that time. And so they need help. And maybe the help that they need is more training, is a teacher that rotates, is, you know, it's difficult because I get what Miss Joy is saying as far as a teacher goes, or even an assistant teacher or a specialist or someone in that area. The problem is you have, you know, 2 first graders over here and 5, you know, 6th graders over in these 2 schools, and it becomes a logistical nightmare because not all the students line up in the classes. And, you know, we understand how that works too, and how we have to move people around, and it's not fun. So my personal viewpoint is, I'm saying, I think the intention is there. I think it's a great start. I think we're moving in the right direction, but I really feel like we don't have a handle on the data enough to know where we are, where we want to go, and specifically what is meeting the needs of the students, and where are we going to target our money and our people and our staff, and coming up with part of that plan for the fall. The staff that are not doing their traditional roles because it is online, and maybe not as many of them are needed, where else can they be utilized? What else can they be trained to do that they may actually enjoy and then have more job opportunities later? That's just my thoughts.
Ms. Jones, I have a question for you. With the screening, that's going to be happening in the very young children, and, you know, the kindergarten or whatever. What about the kids that are already in our system that haven't been screened, that are in like 4th grade or 7th grade, or, you know, is there an ability to screen those children as well if we see that they're identified as needing screening?
Yes. Yes, we are looking at it as a whole, and we are well aware that I believe we have some in, you know, 4th grade We have had that conversation as a team for actually, I believe, identifying in middle and in high that we need to address now. So knowing this, we can't, we have to also start somewhere. So we know as well that we have to manage what's coming in on top, but we also need to hit the K1 and 2 and screen them so that we also start building, that flow where we don't see them in 5 years. We're not having children that are in high school and 4 years behind in their reading, because they were diagnosed as dyslexic.
Right. I mean, it obviously makes sense to diagnose them as early as possible, but at the same time, we've got these other students that haven't been diagnosed that just because they're past that prime year of learning and changing, we can't forget about them either.
No, we actually had a meeting today with Fran Bowman, who is the creator of OG Plus, and Orton Gillingham. And so we have been working with several contacts to come up with a plan to further this. I know in between everything else and the changes and the other plans we've had to make for virtual and everything else, but we still have tried to stay steadfast in working with them. And I mean, me and Christy today met with her, and she gave us quite a lot of information on, how she sees we could go about it. And we need to bring that back to the team.
I also just have one more thought. The academic coaches that we have currently in the building, I think if we think about that again as a continuum, all education is and needs to be the same. It may look different, but we educate all students the same. They all have the same opportunities. They may come at them differently, but if we already have instructional coaches, how are we utilizing instructional coaches to coach special education teachers as well? That might not be their bailiwick, but it wasn't the teacher in the classroom specialty either until it had to become that, because it is, and that is not going away. It is not going away. We are going to continue to get a broad space spectrum here. So I just feel like we need to look at all those different pieces before we make those decisions of where our money is going to be best utilized for this, and see what happens with the crazy world we live in. Because as I have said it before, and I will say it again, we may need 2 more people in technology, and one of them needs to be a specialty in special education technology, or maybe traveling house to house to try to help out with that, or we don't know. But parents are struggling as well, and they need help. They need that person. And I think we've got to stop thinking about everything is going to go back to the way it was, and we're going to keep filling the instructional model the way that it was, because I doubt it's going to be that way for a very long time. I would love it to be that way.
Yeah, I was going to say I can speak to some of this. We've already been discussing a number of the topics that you've been talking about, as well as been doing some preliminary work with our academic coaches, as well as some preliminary trainings in the support of the very different world that we have inherited in the pandemic as far as school is concerned. And so one of the tasks that we've been working on is looking at the research surrounding virtual learning environments and what that means as far as related to special education, an equity lens, social emotional. So those are some things that my team's currently working on and through, so that we can prepare some positive trainings and looking at readiness in the fall. We know that one of the most important things or aspects about a school, especially if we are starting a school in a remote learning environment, is that powerful role of connection and that relationship that teachers build. And so some of the work that we're trying to look at is how can we ensure that we're making that meaningful connection through social emotional, through an equity lens, through a high quality best practices virtual learning environment. So that's some of the work that we have been discussing the last few weeks, trying to figure out as we move forward. Unfortunately, the target keeps evolving on us a little bit and is slowing some of that work down. But part of our goal too, with some of the work that Ms. Jones and her team have been doing, is some of the reading training we're targeting towards our academic coaches and assessment models, so that we can help make sure that they're helping support our regular ed teachers as well as our special education teachers with some of that work. Because like you said, it is basically more than just a special education teacher's responsibility. It's all of our responsibility to see the success of all of our students. So there's been a lot of work going on in the background, and we haven't really included it in this evening because, like I said, it keeps evolving, but we do have a lot of work that's happening right now, and that hopefully maybe here in the near future, as we get a little cleaner picture, we'll be providing you more transparency on what the plans are.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Dilly. Ms. Skinner, can I make a motion that we table the positions until we know what we're doing with virtual or whatever else we're doing and what those needs may specifically be?
As soon as we get finished with this presentation and we do the consent agenda. How about? Are there any other questions for Ms. Jones?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, summarize my position. I agree with Ms. Ogden, and I think we need to know the correct profile of our students coming in, the numbers, and we need this data to be fixed. We need to know if we, why there's a conflict every year, and that, and then if there's some kind of literature on these screeners, because I just see the word screener, but I'd like to research that a little bit myself to see really what it covers. I think it would be helpful to ask the teachers what would be most helpful to them. I don't know if that was done, but the special ed teachers, I think I taught special ed for 15 years, and what I could have really used was another pair of eyes, not somebody that comes and tells me how to improve this and that. I mean, I could do that sorry, my dog came in. In a professional development, I could get some strategies and techniques, but I really would personally could use another body. And so I think we should ask the teachers what would be most helpful. That's all. Thank you.
Any other question or discussion? Well, thank you, Ms. Jones, for your presentation and your team being here and all the explanation. And it sounds like you're trying to do a lot of good things for the kids, so it's appreciated. All right.
There is one thing that I can add, Cindy, Christy, if it's okay with you. It's in relation to the coaches and why I think that they would be essential. I know that we were talking about numbers and data and so forth, but I did want to make a point that even though these coaches would essentially be special education teachers, their position essentially is to provide more training for our special education teachers. Like so many people have mentioned, a lot of our special education teachers are not equipped, did not learn in graduate programs how to handle a lot of these disabilities, how to implement their accommodations. So essentially these coaches would assist special education teachers in implementing strategies. Not all strategies work for one student, and really just improve on their instructional practices, provide consistent training for them one-on-one or in groups. So I really just wanted to point that out in terms of our coaches. They're not just special education teachers. They're there to provide support, ensure that we are in compliance, to support the teachers, the parents, the staff in all different areas. So I just wanted to, leave with that comment.
And I just want to add something too before you take up the motion for consideration. Of the positions that special ed presented this evening, we do have only 4 on the consent agenda tonight for you to consider. And there was a lot of conversation and questions this evening about compliance. And from my understanding from the audit and our compliance obligations is that, we need to move forward with the BCBA and the PERT position, if I'm understanding that correctly. The other piece of it is that, again, a lot of concerns raised, a lot of information presented as far as where special ed feels that they need to go and the support and the roles that they need in order to move in that direction. And that was a special education coordinator position. It's, you know, the ideal isn't necessarily to create a new position, but to realign a position that already is in existence. And you know, they presented an org chart, and if you notice, there's no leadership structure within that department. So Cindy is the only position that is technically in a leadership role. And the one thing that I gleaned from it and from my experience here is that she has absolutely no leadership support. And so by considering a coordinator position at this time, I think it would be important to do so in order to provide her with that much needed support, and I think is an important strategic consideration for us to take this evening.
Thank you. We appreciate the insight. Addressing that though, really quickly, like the BCBA position, that would help eliminate moving students out of county to other facilities. Is that correct, Ms. Loring or Ms. Jones?
Yes, that is one of the primary goals of the addition of that position. Along with it will support a large number of other challenges and needs within the district, but that is one of the key components of the response plan.
And if we are in a virtual environment, how would that position be affected?
They actually reach out to the families, and what we wanted with this position is because we've noticed in the past we have had to move students to a place like Aurora or Brookline where they could receive ABA therapy. So providing the ABA therapy, they're doing it virtually. We have several of our staff, not staff or positions, that are doing virtual as well with our students that used to get bused to Aurora are now home. They're doing ABA virtually. So you're looking, and also that person can train our staff, and we can provide that for ours, which also gives our staff, teachers and aides, the training to deal with behaviors that they were never trained how to do. So we did look at that data as we read it, and we did our analysis of all the data. We did see that that was a big part of it, is that they didn't have the training. So how is the quickest way that we know just from recent placements what was missing that they could not stay here?
Do we have any kind of requirements, Cindy, or expectation on special education department? It's like, what are our numbers on how many special education teachers take specialized training, or the assistants take that specialized training, or if something is offered specifically for them, how many of them are actually participating in it if we actually offer it?
For the ABA or for in the past?
In general, just
and the general, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, in the past, we have actually done surveys with our staff and brought in actually a lot of state training for them, as well as created training. Our BCBA that we do have right now has created training in behavior because of what they've asked for. So they go. This ABA, we are not going to make it optional if you work in the autism rooms.
So the 6 professional development days do we get? How targeted are we getting for special education development for our staff? And do we have a number that we're trying to hit, that we want a certain percentage of our staff to be able to participate in it? And that, what are we offering? Do we have anything that shows us any of that?
Right now I'm working with Tanya Lewis, and we're discussing staff development because I believe with the new calendar that's kind of changed what we are doing. I don't know if she could talk more to that or Mr. Dilly can. So we've been kind of having our list of what we need, and we're not sure what we're able to implement again in this new world that we have right now. If we took it all and went back, I could probably have a better answer for you of what we're asking. And normally what we did, if we go back and take this all away, the COVID, and everything. We actually brought our staff and our special education teachers in earlier. We know we're going to have to target them this year after we've gotten over. We have state meetings every Thursday, and the changes that are going to happen with all the IEP meetings that have to happen and how we're going to train them. They've added a few things to our IEPs online. Right now, that's going to be, we really need to support our staff in this transition. We don't know if we're coming back 5 days, 4 days, virtually, just like but we think we really need to get together right now to support them in the process of bringing the students back, having the meetings for each student, working with the parents for the fit, working with our parents that choose virtual. This is a new world for us, as it is for you. What is going to be the best fit? Are we going to be able to do person? Are we going to be able to? My staff is asking me, will we be able to go into the home? I'm not asking them to go, I kid you not. They want to know my OT-PT speech. They want to know, can we go into the home, or can they meet us somewhere so we can still do our one-on-one? But we will be doing PT, OT virtually, speech virtually, looking into and working with technology at this point, and working with them for cameras and certain things we're going to need to buy, especially with OT, of what they need to see when they're working with OT, getting kits together. We have a shopping list, and if I start to ramble, I apologize, just stop me, of what's coming out.
You're not rambling. It's just incredibly overwhelming, the situation that we're currently in.
It is.
Well, and I think what Ms. Jones and her team's really speaking to is the real need that, obviously our staff, even in a regular environment with the evolving needs, continues to need additional training. But I think with the reality facing us with the possibility of a remote learning environment or virtual learning is a strong consideration. This is something that's going to require even more training and support than we've ever asked of our staff. And so I think we really need to reinforce the need to try to put as much support personnel to enable us to be as successful as possible in supporting those new environments.
Okay. So that brings us to the consent agenda. And Ms. Loring, you're suggesting that the BCBA and the PERC are necessary right now to get us back into compliance with what we do.
Yes, that was the plan that was submitted as our recommendations to address these issues, and that was what was accepted and approved by the state.
Okay. And having a BCBA, the part that we were out of compliance with was the lack of diversification of the students that are being sent out of state. Is that correct? So do we have other students that have been identified that would require this service, that having this person, are we trying to bring students back from out of state with this person, or is this person going to address additional students?
Yeah, it's, its goal would be to service in that respect in the compliance arena, but obviously would be utilized in the areas of a BCBA where with regard to training, working with students, interventions, any other needs that would fall in that arena and that position's responsibilities throughout any given school year.
And the PERC, is that the same situation?
That would be, it's part of the same audit and the same compliance requirements.
Isn't that audit, that's the issue, or an issue that we don't know if that data is accurate. If we have all this conflicting data and the data that the state's using is extremely improbable, I just feel like maybe somebody could look into that first, just to make sure that that's not an issue.
Well, I'll let Sean and Cindy jump in, but from what my understanding is that once you have a plan of action established with the state, then you're expected to move along and meet those obligations. There's really not any, you can question it. You can still question it and look into it and correct the data, but we still have to move forward with the plan that was accepted by them.
Well, that's not logical. I mean, if it's found that there was flawed data, then the state would, you know, why would they say you still have to do it? That doesn't make sense.
As Ms. Jones shared earlier, in response, I believe, to a question, she said that she would share the data and calculation approach that the state took, and that she also had discussed with them and argued with them prior to actually moving forward with the compliance plan, because she also disputed the data that was provided, but she also said she would go ahead and share with you the available information that she had in the calculation and the website that calculation was determined by.
I'm not questioning the calculation. I'm questioning that the data the state has is 14% across the board, and there's an error somewhere. So either the data was presented incorrectly or somebody made a mistake, and it takes more than just a couple hours for the person I talked to. She said the data didn't look right. So, I mean, she agreed. I just feel like how can you expect somebody to move forward on this issue when this whole being out of compliance is based on this data that's not clear. It's just not. I mean, I've spent time asking for clean data, and from, you know, the board and from the state, and data that doesn't look right. And it's one thing to calculate why there's a problem. You can look at that data that's on the state, and you don't need statistics. You can look at that and say there's a problem, because you can look at the socioeconomic level of the whites and blacks and see that, you know, there's a discrepancy with the number of black students getting special ed services based on the number you would expect given their low socioeconomic status. So, but you had told me that those numbers are wrong. You said that. And so that's why I'm saying if these numbers are not right, then the state has created this based on wrong data. How hard is it to go back tomorrow and meet with the state to say, you know, can we talk about this data? Is this the data that, you know, we're using here, because it looks flawed?
The data was checked and double checked, and they actually use an outside agency. The state director of special ed, Renee Eccles-Hardy, and Shayna Clay over at finance at the state level check the data. We are found disproportionate on placing white Caucasian people in outside places like Grafton, Brook Lane, Aurora, that we're
talking about different things here.
And that's what we found. That's the data that we were found. The other one is, and they confirmed that it is correct. They had their outside agency, they got back to us, they confirmed it in January and basically told or ordered to make the plan and continue with the steps.
And the statistician for the state told me that she thought that it was highly improbable. So it's anybody can go look, and anybody that looks at it can say this doesn't make any sense. These numbers.
If you can provide me that name of that statistician, I'll be happy to have a conversation with them.
Okay, I can get it. Email you tomorrow.
Our question is too, how many students do we know are we out of compliance? Like say we didn't meet that, but is it 2 students? So if we move 2 students back into or out of Aurora or Grafton or whatever, we would all of a sudden slide into compliance. You know, and trust me, I get the whole state it's not easy to work with, and it is extremely frustrating. But I also hear what Ms. Joy is saying, that, you know, sometimes it is so much easier to just take it and do what you got to do instead of finding ways around it, as we always used to hear from Mr. Sufer, right, Ms. Sutton? And not accepting that all the time. And I'm not saying we did that. All I'm saying is, yeah, and it could be that they still say no just because they want to. And they have a right to do that because they've done it before. But, you know, that I guess is where the swirling question is.
One more thing, that data would have been wrong for many years. It doesn't, you don't just get dinged by the government for 1 year. There's been a pattern, but the pattern on the website is, it's unusual. It says that every year they have the same amount of kids. And that, if they're using that data to say you've been out of compliance, there's a pattern. Well, I just think, given the fact that Mr. Dilly claims that it's not correct. He said, this isn't what I sent them. Well, then, you know, deal with that first before you create positions that we don't even know how many kids we're going to have or what the situation's going to be. And, you know, it's not going to change anything to come back in 2 weeks with clean data and clear numbers. Maybe we'll know more about whether the schools are going to open and how they're going to open. Anyway.
Ms. Jones, the virtual BCBA services that our students are getting right now, is that being provided by Aurora and the Grafton, or is that being provided by our own person?
No, it's by Aurora.
So it's still outsourced out of state?
Yes.
And if we post this position and let's say we hire somebody, because I don't think that they're all over the place, so it might be a difficult position to fill, but let's say we're able to fill it. Are we going to have the ability to move students from Grafton or Aurora back into the county with that one position hired? Because I know that, you know, some of them are there and it's for more than one reason.
Correct. I want to say I can maybe think of one or two. There are still some behaviors, unfortunately, that we do not have the resources to address at this time.
Okay, I just want to make sure that this resource would be enough to have the ability to move students back, because otherwise it would defeat the purpose of creating the position to get into compliance.
It will also stop us from moving other kids out.
True. And the cost of having a BCBA on staff compared to the cost of sending kids out of state, those numbers can't even compare, correct?
It runs about $100,000 a child.
For the out-of-state program.
Mm-hmm.
And is that including transportation, or is that just?
That's just the tuition.
Too.
And then depending on what services they need, if they're additional OTPT speech, plus ABA therapy is charged by the hour.
Okay.
So what, can you just answer me one more question as well? Didn't we hire a PERC position in Title I, or did they already have a PERC position in Title I? And can that person be utilized both ways? The BCBA position, you know, I get the piece, but if it sounds like we don't know if we're in compliance, how much more could we possibly hire it through EPIC, where it's an at-will employee? And it's not somebody that has to be RIFed and not somebody who's going to have to deal with all of that, you know, malarkey either. And so that we would know that it's not a position that's going to be around forever if it needs you find change.
For PERC?
There was two separate questions. The PERC, doesn't Title I have a PERC position?
Okay, I'm like, no, they do not. We have not had a PERC position for 4.5 years. There was a part-time one prior to me being here.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 years. We have not had any parent educator resource office.
Okay. What about, okay. I thought I remembered there was one at Ranson.
Yeah, I think you're thinking about the parent coordinators that are hired through Title I. This would be, that would be not necessarily somebody with the specialized training that the PERC would be. with a special ed background and things that they're talking about. So we're talking a little bit similar role, but in some instances, but very different in the regards of certification and training requirements.
Yeah, and I think the other one too is possibly the SOS position with SOMO that you might be thinking of too.
Okay.
That's kind of like a parent liaison position too with SOMO.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
And just for the people listening, just in case, the SOMO has been referenced a couple times this evening. That's just our short name for social emotional department. So for those listening.
All right. Any other last minute questions or comments or motions?
So can I amend my motion that we look to hire that BCABA position through EPIC? And we can hire the PERC position to bring us into compliance through EPIC in case we find that we actually are in compliance and there's an issue with that at this time. And then ask that once we decide whether we are actually in school or not, we can bring those other positions back to the board to find out what our real needs are going to be in regards to special ed and virtual and technology and all those other pieces that keep moving and we're trying to swing at them.
The BCBA position comes out of the money of the 15% out of the federal that I'm mandated to take. So I don't, does that make sense? Maybe Amy?
Yeah, sorry, I missed my, accidentally hit the minimize screen instead of my unmute. I don't have the audit in front of me to see what the drill down specifics are. The only challenge I would potentially see is in our reporting structures. If it's not showing up on our reports coming from WEVIS, it might be questioned. So I don't have the data in front of me to drill down enough to be able to answer that. And like Cindy said, if there's a stipulation with percentages of budget, then that would be problematic.
And Ms. Loring, is there a time frame where we have to get this done? If there, can we take a little while to just verify everything to make sure we're, on track with everything? Or is there a deadline that we have to be in compliance or in the motions to get into compliance?
I think it would be fair given the timelines and that we have, an August board meeting before technically the school starts. So if Mr. Dilley or Ms. Jones differs with my guidance, then I would say that we could look that up and come back the first meeting in August. Would that work for you, Sean?
I just feel uncomfortable that we have so many things that are gray areas right now with this.
So I'll make a motion that we, my original motion that we table the positions until we have further information.
Is there a second?
Osborne, second.
All in favor of tabling the positions?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, I saw you, Ms. Joy. You voted aye, correct?
Yeah, I couldn't get my unmute thingy.
I saw you wave at me. We're good. All right. Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Well, it's been under 3 hours, so I appreciate everybody's patience with us this evening. We've definitely covered a lot of ground, I think. And any other last minute comments by the superintendent or board members? All right. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday. Thank you.